The Vallani homeworld had never known silence like this. For 3,000 years, the crystalline beings had filled their skies with songs of mathematics and beauty. But now, only the hum of failing shields remained. Elder Shamara stood in the council chamber, her translucent body flickering with colors of deep sorrow as she watched the latest report stream in. From the outer colonies, the Krethiks were coming. They had already consumed 4 colony worlds. Millions of Vallani had simply vanished, their crystal matrices shattered and absorbed into the endless hunger of the swarm. The Vallani had tried everything their peaceful civilization could imagine. They offered resources, technology, even entire uninhabited planets. The swarm did not negotiate. It only consumed. Shamara's voice chimed like breaking glass as she addressed the council. We have no weapons. We have no warriors. Our bodies cannot endure violence. She paused, her inner light dimming. We must call for help. The younger council member Loomis resonated with confusion. But Elder, who would help us? The Federation worlds have already refused. They say the Krethiks are too dangerous. They will not risk their own people. Shamara moved to the great window overlooking their capital city. The towers of living crystal caught the light of their sun, creating rainbows that danced across the gardens below. So beautiful. So fragile. Then, we must look beyond the Federation. We must send our distress signal everywhere, to anyone who might listen. The signal went out 3 days later. It carried the Vallani's plea in every known language, broadcast across quantum channels that reached to the furthest edges of explored space. Most species who received it deleted the message immediately. Getting involved with the Krethiks meant death. But the signal traveled further than the Vallani had hoped, pushed along by relay stations and curious scientists, until it reached a small blue planet in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. Earth. Captain Ji-hoon was drinking his morning coffee when the communication officer rushed onto the bridge of the UNS Horizon. The young woman's face was pale with excitement. Sir, you need to hear this. We picked up a distress call. It's not from any human colony. Ji-hoon set down his cup carefully. The Horizon was a deep space exploration vessel, currently mapping systems in Sector 447. First contact protocols were clear, but distress calls changed everything. Play it. The message filled the bridge. Even translated into Korean and English, the desperation was clear. A species called the Vallani was dying. A swarm was eating their worlds. They needed help. They were begging for help. Science Officer May Ray pulled up the data that came with the message. Her eyes went wide. Captain, their biology. They're incredibly fragile. Average body density, less than water. No redundant organs. They can't survive in anything above 0.7 standard gravity. She looked up at him. Sir, to them, we would be monsters. Ji-hoon read through the data himself. The Vallani lived on low-gravity worlds with carefully controlled atmospheres. They had never developed weapons because their bodies would shatter from the recoil. Their entire civilization was built on mathematics, art, and philosophy. They were perhaps the most gentle species he had ever heard of, and they were about to be destroyed. Send this to command, Ji-hoon said quietly. Market priority 1. The response from Earth came faster than expected. Admiral Minseo herself appeared on the view screen, her stern face softened slightly by concern. Captain Ji-hoon, I've reviewed your transmission. Command is divided on this issue. Divided, sir? Ji-hoon felt his jaw tighten. There's a species facing genocide. There's also the matter of the Federation, Minseo replied. We've been trying to establish diplomatic relations for 5 years. If we intervene in a situation they've deemed too dangerous, it could damage those efforts. She paused. Moreover, the Vallani themselves might fear us. Their records mark Earth as a Class 12 death world. Do you know what that means to most species? Ji-hoon did know. He had read the reports. Most intelligent life evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and abundant resources. Earth was a nightmare planet by their standards. Extreme weather, tectonic activity, thousands of predator species, diseases that killed in days. Humanity had clawed its way to space through determination and blood. It means they'll be terrified of us, Ji-hoon said. But Admiral, isn't that better than being dead? Minseo was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of command. I agree, Captain. I've convinced enough of the Council. We're sending the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. 15 ships, full military complement. Her image leaned forward. But Ji-hoon, this is first contact with a species that has every reason to fear us. We need to save them without breaking them. Can you do that? Ji-hoon thought of his crew. Commander Hyunwoo, who had negotiated peace between 3 rival Mars colonies. Ambassador Young-soo, who could make friends with anyone. Medical Officer Ji-won, whose gentle hands had saved countless lives. They were warriors, yes, born of a harsh world. But they were also human, and humans understood what it meant to protect those who could not protect themselves. Yes, sir, Ji-hoon said. We can do that. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet assembled in record time. Ships pulled from patrol routes, crews recalled from leave. The UN's Horizon would lead, but behind her came destroyers, carriers, and marine transport ships. 15 vessels crewed by 8,000 humans. All volunteers who had heard the Villani's cry for help died as the fleet prepared to jump to slipspace. Ji-hoon stood on his bridge and looked at the faces of his crew. They were afraid. He could see that. But they were also determined. Earth had taught humanity many harsh lessons. But the most important was this: the strong had a duty to protect the weak. All ships report ready. Captain, the communication officer announced. Ji-hoon nodded. Then let's show the galaxy what Deathworlders do when someone calls for help. Engage slipspace drives. The fleet vanished in a flash of light, racing toward a species that feared them almost as much as they feared the swarm. But Ji-hoon knew that fear could be overcome. Understanding could be built. And if the Krethiks thought they would face the same gentle prey they had consumed before, they were about to learn a very painful lesson about what happened when you threatened someone under humanity's protection. The Deathworlders were coming. The exit from slipspace was not gentle. 15 human warships tore back into normal space with a thunderclap of displaced energy that sent shock waves rippling across every sensor within a light minute. On the Villani station Crystal Haven, alarms shrieked in frequencies that made the crystalline beings resonate with pain. Elder Shimara rushed to the observation deck and felt her light body flicker with terror. The human fleet hung in space like sleeping predators. The ships were dark, angular, covered in armor plating that seemed designed for ramming rather than elegance. Point defense guns bristled from every surface. The largest vessel, marked UN's Horizon, was 3 times the size of Crystal Haven itself. To Shimara's eyes, they looked like weapons that someone had carved engines into. They came, Loomis whispered beside her, colors shifting between hope and fear. The Deathworlders actually came. Before Shimara could respond, a communication channel opened. The face that appeared on the screen made several Villani Council members step backward in instinctive horror. The human was dense, so impossibly dense. Shimara could see the thickness of his bones through the medical overlay her systems automatically provided. His muscles were bundles of compressed protein designed for violence. His eyes, forward-facing like a predator's, looked directly at her. But then he smiled, and something in that expression made Shimara pause. "This is Captain Ji-hoon of the United Nations ship Horizon," the human said, speaking slowly in their translated language. "We received your distress call. We're here to help." He paused, and his smile faded into something more serious. "I know we must look frightening to you. I'm sorry for that. But I promise you, we didn't travel across the galaxy to hurt you. We came to protect you." Shamara found her voice, though it chimed with uncertainty. "Captain Ji-hoon, we are grateful. But we must be honest. Your species terrifies us. The Galactic database lists your world as unsurvivable. It says your people evolved through constant warfare with your own planet." Ji-hoon nodded slowly. "That's true. Earth is a harsh world. It made us into survivors. But it also taught us something important." He leaned forward slightly. "It taught us that the strong should protect the weak. May we come aboard your station? I'd like to send a small team. Just a few people to meet you face to face." Every instinct in Shamara's body screamed to refuse. But she looked at the data streaming in from the outer colonies. The Krethic swarm was 2 days away from Vellani Prime. 2 days until her entire civilization ceased to exist. What choice did she have? "You may send a shuttle," she said quietly. The human shuttle was small but still built like a tank. It docked with Crystal Haven with mechanical precision, and the airlocks cycled open. Commander Hyunwoo stepped through first, followed by Ambassador Young-soo and Medical Officer Ji-won. All three had been carefully chosen. Hyunwoo was compact for a human, less physically intimidating. Young-soo had a gentle face and moved slowly, carefully. Ji-won was female, and the humans had hoped that might seem less threatening, thought it didn't help much. The Vellani who greeted them pressed themselves against the walls of the corridor, their crystalline bodies resonating with fear. Hyunwoo stopped immediately, holding up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "We won't come closer if it frightens you," he said softly. "We can talk from here." Shamara forced herself to approach. Up close, the humans were even more terrifying. Their skin was thick, designed to hold in fluids under varying pressures. Their bones were like iron bars. When Ji-won breathed, Shamara could see the expansion of her chest cavity, the powerful muscles that drew in air. These beings were built to survive anything. "You are so different from us," Shamara said, unable to hide the tremor in her voice. Young-soo, the ambassador, nodded kindly. "We are, but different doesn't have to mean enemy." He gestured to himself. "Would you like to scan us? Learn about our biology? Sometimes understanding reduces fear." Shamara agreed, and her medical staff began running scans on the three humans. What they discovered made the Vellani scientists chime with disbelief. Jae-won, who had volunteered for the most detailed examination, stood calmly as they mapped her body. "Impossible," one of the medical technicians resonated. "This human has redundant organs. 2 kidneys, 2 lungs. Her brain has multiple sections that can compensate if one is damaged. Her blood carries its own oxygen and clotting factors. She could survive injuries that would kill 20 Vellani." Ji-won smiled gently. "It's not as impressive as it sounds. Mostly it just means we're hard to kill, which was useful on Earth." She looked at the frightened technicians. "But it also means we're very good at protecting others. We don't break easily." While the medical staff worked with Ji-won, Hyunwoo and Young-soo sat with Elder Shamara in the council chamber. A holographic display showed the approaching Krethic swarm. Tactical Officer Daeyeon had joined via communication link, his image appearing above the table. "The swarm operates on simple logic," Daeyeon explained, highlighting sections of the display. "They move in patterns, consume everything, move again. They've never had to adapt because nothing has ever fought back." He looked at Shamara. "That's going to change. You truly believe you can stop them?" Shamara asked. "They've consumed 4 of our worlds. Billions of drones, all working as one mind." Diane's smile was predatory, and it made Shamara's light flicker with instinctive fear. "Elder Shamara, Humans spent 10,000 years fighting each other before we even reached space. We know warfare in ways most species can't imagine. The Krethiks are used to prey that runs. They're about to meet predators. Young-Su placed a hand on the table, careful not to touch Shamara. We understand your fear of us. Really, we do. Most species see humans as monsters because we come from a monster planet. But there's something you should know about Earth. His voice was soft but firm. Yes, it tried to kill us every day. Yes, we evolved to be tough and violent. But we also evolved to be loyal, to form packs, to protect our own. He met Shamara's crystalline eyes. And you asked for our help. That makes you ours to protect. Over the next hours, the humans worked to build trust. G1 shared stories of human medicine, of doctors who worked in war zones to save strangers. Hyunwoo spoke of the colonies on Mars and Europa, how humans had learned to protect fragile environments. Young-Su talked about Earth's history, the long, slow journey from tribal warfare to global cooperation. Slowly, carefully, the Vellani began to see past the frightening exterior. These Deathworlders were warriors, yes. They were built for violence in ways the Vellani could barely comprehend. But they were also capable of incredible gentleness, of self-sacrifice, of choosing to use their strength for protection rather than conquest. Young Loomis approached Ji-won near the end of the meeting. I read that humans sing before battle. Is that true? Ji-won nodded. Sometimes. It helps us remember what we're fighting for. Could you teach me a human song? Loomis asked quietly. Ji-won smiled and began to sing, her voice soft and clear. It was an old song from Earth, about standing together in dark times. The Vellani in the room resonated with the melody, their bodies creating harmonics that blended with the human's voice. For the first time since the Krethiks had appeared, Shamara felt something like hope. These Deathworlders were terrifying, but they had crossed the galaxy to stand between her people and annihilation. As she watched Ji-won teaching Loomis the song, she realized that perhaps monsters were only monsters when they chose to be, and the humans had chosen to be heroes instead. The Krethik swarm arrived at Sarah's Light exactly when the human tactical computers predicted they would. From Crystal Haven, the Vellani watched in horror as their instruments detected millions of signatures dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The swarm had come to feed. Admiral Minseo stood on the bridge of the Unsoul, the fleet's command carrier, and studied the tactical display with cold calculation. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and put down rebellions on the outer colonies, but she had never seen anything quite like this. The Krethiks moved like a living organism, each drone perfectly coordinated with millions of others. They're beautiful in a way, she murmured. Terrible, but beautiful. Her second officer looked at her with surprise. Sir? Minseo smiled without humor. Perfect coordination. No hesitation. No fear. She pulled up the deployment grid, which means they've never learned to adapt. They're about to get an education. Launch all fighters. Begin Operation Deathworld. On Crystal Haven, Elder Shamara watched through the human-provided observation feeds as the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet moved into position. She expected them to maintain distance, to use their superior weapons from range. Instead, the human ships accelerated directly toward the swarm. They're flying into certain death, Shamara breathed, her body flickering with distress. Commander Hyunwoo, who had remained aboard the station as liaison, shook his head. No, Elder. They're doing what humans do best. Fighting in conditions that would kill anyone else. Fighter pilot. Sunho led the first squadron into the asteroid field surrounding Sira's Light. His cockpit displays showed rocks the size of buildings tumbling through space in chaotic patterns. The Vellani had mapped this field, but considered it impassable. No pilot could navigate through it safely. No Vellani pilot. Gold Squadron, Follow my lead, Sunho called over the com. Time to show these bugs what a Deathworlder can do. His fighter dove into the asteroid field at speeds that made the Vellani observers chime with terror. G-forces that would have crushed the Vellani into paste pressed against Sunho's body, but his reinforced skeleton and dense musculature absorbed the punishment. He spun his craft between two asteroids with centimeters to spare, then pulled a turn that registered 8 Gs on his instruments. Behind him, the Krethix drones tried to follow. They were fast and coordinated, but they had never encountered flying like this. 3 drones collided with asteroids in the first minute. More followed as Sunho led the swarm on a deadly dance through the tumbling rocks. Target the big ones, Sunho called to his squadron. Force them into the rocks. Let physics do the work. On the ground, Colonel Yoonji watched the aerial battle from the command post they had established on Sarah's Light. The Vellani had evacuated to underground shelters, terrified of both the Krethix and the human warriors who had come to defend them. Yoonji didn't blame them. Her Marines looked like something from a nightmare. Each soldier wore power armor that doubled their already impressive strength. They carried weapons designed to punch through ship hulls. Their helmets had been painted with skulls and battle symbols from a dozen human cultures. To the gentle Vellani, they must look like death itself. "Colonel, the swarm is landing troops on the northern continent," her tactical officer reported. "High radiation zone." The Vellani said nothing could survive there for more than a few hours. Yoonji grinned inside her helmet. Nothing Vellani could survive. "Marines, mount up. We're going hunting." The transport ships dropped the Marines directly into a radiation zone that registered 50 times the lethal dose for Vellani biology. For humans, it meant they would need medical treatment in a few weeks. For now, the radiation was just another hazard to ignore. The Krethix drones emerged from their landing ships and immediately encountered something they had never faced before: prey that fought back. Yoonji's Marines opened fire with weapons that had been designed for war on Earth, where conflicts were brutal and unforgiving. Railguns tore through Krethix armor. Plasma cutters designed for asteroid mining melted through their exoskeletons. And when the drones closed to melee range, they found that humans in power armor were stronger than they were. Private Selman, a former mining engineer, had modified her armor to carry an industrial cutting laser. She swept it through a wave of drones, cutting them apart like grass. "I spent 5 years cutting rocks on Titan," she shouted over the comm. "These bugs are easier." Medic Taeyang moved through the battlefield with calm efficiency, treating wounded Marines who kept fighting despite injuries that would have killed most sapiens. One soldier had a piece of shrapnel embedded in his shoulder, but refused evacuation because he could still shoot. Another had a broken arm, but used his other hand to throw grenades. "You're all insane," Taeyang muttered as she sealed a wound with battlefield glue. "But I love you crazy Deathworlders." In space, Admiral Minseo watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. The Krethix were adapting, learning from their losses, but it was too little too late. Human tactics were built on thousands of years of warfare evolution. Every culture on Earth had contributed something: Korean naval strategy, German engineering, African endurance tactics, South American jungle warfare. The Krethix faced not just one species, but the collected military wisdom of an entire planet that specialized in conflict. "They're trying to flank us through the debris field," her tactical officer reported. "Let them," Minseo replied. "Activate the mines." The humans had spent the previous day seeding the debris field with weapons the Vellani had never imagined. Not elegant energy weapons or clean missiles, but crude explosive devices that could function in high radiation, extreme cold, and crushing gravity. Earth weapons. Deathworld weapons. The Krethix drones flew into the minefield and died by the thousands. On Crystal Haven, Shimara watched the battle with emotions she couldn't name. Horror at the violence, yes, but also awe. The humans fought with a precision and ferocity that seemed impossible. They moved through environments that should kill them. They endured injuries that should end them. And they did it all to protect people they had never met. Loomis resonated beside her. Elder, look at the casualty reports. Shamara pulled up the data, and her light stuttered with disbelief. The humans had lost 3 fighters and taken 17 wounded Marines. The Krethiks have lost over 40,000 drones. It wasn't a battle. It was extermination. How are they so good at this? Shamara whispered. Hyanwu, standing nearby, heard the question. His voice was quiet when he answered. Because Earth never gave us a choice. We learned to fight or we died. For millions of years, that was the only rule. He looked at her, his eyes sad but determined. We didn't ask to be warriors, Elder Shamara. Our world made us this way. But now that we are what we are, we choose to use it for something good. The Battle of Sira's Light lasted 8 more hours. By the end, the Krethik swarm had retreated, leaving behind hundreds of thousands of their dead. The humans had secured the planet with minimal losses. As the fleet moved into orbital positions, the Marines on the ground began helping Villani refugees return to their homes. Someone used her mining laser to clear rubble. Taiyang set up a medical station to treat Villani suffering from stress-induced crystal fractures. Yunji's Marines, still in their terrifying armor, carefully lifted delicate Villani structures back into place with hands that could crush steel, but chose to be gentle. On the Unsoul, Admiral Minseo received a transmission from Elder Shamara. The Villani's image appeared on screen, her colors shifting with complex emotions. You saved us, Shamara said simply. We thought you might be monsters. But you're heroes. Minseo shook her head slowly. We're both, Elder. We're monsters to our enemies and heroes to our friends. That's what it means to be human. She smiled slightly. The question is, which one do you want us to be? Shamara's answer came without hesitation. Friends. If you'll have us. Then friends it is, Minseo replied. And friends protect each other. The Krethiks will be back. We'll be ready. Across the fleet, 8,000 humans prepared for the next battle. They cleaned weapons, repaired armor, and sang songs from Earth. They were Deathworlders, born of a planet that tried to kill them every day. But they had chosen to use their strength for protection, their violence for defense, their terrible skills for the noblest purpose of all to stand between the weak and the darkness. And they would not move. 3 days after the Battle of Sira's Light, Cultural Officer Hana stood in the garden district of Crystal Haven and tried not to laugh. A group of young Villani children had gathered around her, their crystalline bodies shimmering with curiosity rather than fear. One of them, barely tall enough to reach her knee, was carefully poking her leg. "You're very hard," the child chimed in fascination. "Like rock, but warm." Hana knelt down slowly, moving with exaggerated care so as not to frighten them. "That's my bones. They're made of something called calcium. On my planet, we need strong bones because gravity is much heavier than here." Another child asked, "Does it hurt? Being so heavy all the time?" "No," Hana said gently. "We're used to it. Actually, we feel very light here on your station. Like we could float away." She demonstrated by jumping slightly, rising higher than she intended in the low gravity. The children resonated with delight. An older Villani approached, colors shifting with cautious approval. "They were terrified of you 3 days ago. Now they treat you like a curiosity. How did you manage that?" Hana smiled. "I sat in the garden every day and did nothing threatening. I ate food, read books, sang songs. I let them see that under the scary exterior, I'm just a person." She looked at the Villani elder. "Fear of the unknown is natural, but unknown becomes familiar with time." Across the station, young scholar Prisma sat in the human library aboard the Un's Horizon, absolutely fascinated. Captain Ji-hoon had given her permission to access their cultural database. And what she found there was changing everything she thought she knew about Deathworlders. Yes, human history was filled with violence. Wars that lasted decades. Conflicts that killed millions. The data was horrifying. But woven through that violence was something else. Art created in the midst of war. Music composed in occupied cities. Poetry written by soldiers who hated fighting. Humans had not just survived violence. They had created beauty despite it. This painting, Prisma said to Ji-hoon, who had come to check on her. It's from something called the Second World War, one of your deadliest conflicts. Ji-hoon looked at the image. That's Picasso's Guernica, painted during a bombing. It's about the horror of war, Prisma observed, her body shifting to colors of confusion. But if humans hate war, why are you so good at it? Ji-hoon sat down carefully, the chair creaking under his Deathworld density. That's the question, isn't it? The truth is, we became good at war because we had no choice. Earth forced us to fight for every scrap of survival. But hating something and being good at it aren't opposites. He gestured to the painting. We create art about war because we remember. We don't want to forget the cost. Prisma was quiet for a long moment. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Monsters who enjoyed violence. Predators who killed without thought. Her colors shifted to something like embarrassment. The Galactic database made you sound like demons. Ji-hoon laughed, but it was a sad sound. We are predators, Prisma. That part is true. But Earth taught us that the best predators are also the best protectors. A wolf hunts to feed its pack. A mother bear fights to protect her cubs. Humans learn to channel our aggressive instincts into protection of our group. He met her crystalline eyes. The question isn't whether we're capable of violence. We clearly are. The question is what we choose to do with that capability. Meanwhile, in the intelligence section of the fleet, Officer Junho was making a discovery that would change everything. He had been analyzing the Krethix drones captured during the battle, trying to understand their communication patterns. What he found made his blood run cold. Admiral, he said over the secure channel, you need to see this. Admiral Minseo appeared in his lab within minutes, accompanied by Captain Ji-hoon. Junho pulled up the neural mapping he had extracted from a Krethix drone's cortex. The swarm isn't attacking the Villani out of aggression, Junho explained. They're fleeing. Look at these memory patterns. The Krethix originated from a region of space about 300 light-years from here. Something destroyed their homeworlds. They're refugees. Minseo stared at the data. Refugees who consume entire planets. They don't have a choice, Junho continued. Their biology requires them to process massive amounts of organic matter. They can't survive without consuming whole ecosystems. They're not evil, Admiral. They're desperate. Ji-hoon felt his stomach sink. If we tell the Villani this, they'll question whether we should be killing them, Minseo finished. She was quiet for a long moment. But the Krethix are still destroying the Villani. Intent doesn't change that. A starving animal is still dangerous. What do we do? Junho asked. Minseo looked at the neural scans, her face troubled. For now, we keep this information restricted. We can't afford to undermine the Alliance when we're still protecting the Villani. But Junho, keep researching. Maybe there's a solution that doesn't involve extermination. On Crystal Haven, Pilot Bora had become unlikely friends with Navigator Loomis. They sat together in the observation deck, looking out at the stars while Bora taught the young Villani about human music. This is called rock music, Bora explained, playing a song from her personal collection. It's loud and aggressive. We use it to get excited before battles. Loomis resonated with confusion. Why would you want to be excited about fighting? Isn't fighting terrible? Bora thought about how to explain. Yes, fighting is terrible. But if you're going into battle anyway, fear can get you killed. So we use music to replace fear with determination. We remind ourselves what we're fighting for. What are you fighting for? Loomis asked quietly. Bora looked at the delicate crystalline being beside her. Right now? Your people. The idea that gentle beings like the Villani should be able to exist in the universe without being consumed. She smiled. On Earth, we have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We're not good people, Loomis. We're too violent for that. But we can stop evil people. Or evil circumstances. Loomis shifted colors to something like understanding. You're not monsters or heroes. You're both. Exactly, Bora agreed. We're what Earth made us. And we choose every day what to do with that. Over the following days, the relationship between the Villani and humans continued to evolve. The Villani learned that humans could be gentle despite their strength. They watched as Marines helped rebuild shattered cities with the same hands that had destroyed the Krethiks. They saw medics treating Villani wounded with incredible care, their thick fingers moving with impossible delicacy. And slowly, the Villani began to understand. The humans were dangerous, yes. They were built for violence in ways the Villani could barely comprehend. But they were also capable of incredible kindness, of self-sacrifice, of choosing to use their power for protection rather than conquest. Elder Shamara sat with Commander Hyunwoo one evening, watching the sunset through the crystal walls of the council chamber. We judged you too quickly, Shamara admitted. We saw only the surface. The weapons, the armor, the violence. We didn't see the hearts beneath. Hyunwoo smiled gently. You had every reason to judge us. We are scary. But scary isn't the same as evil. He paused. Can I tell you something? Every human in this fleet volunteered. We didn't have to come here. Earth didn't order us. We came because we heard people calling for help, and we couldn't ignore that. Why? Shamara asked. You didn't know us. We aren't even the same type of life. Because that's what humans do, Hyunwoo replied simply. We're pack animals, Elder. We protect our pack. And when someone calls for help, they become part of the pack, whether they know it or not. He looked at her seriously. You asked for help. That made you family. Shamara's color shifted to something humans had never seen before, something that meant profound gratitude mixed with wonder. She was beginning to understand that the Deathworlders were more than just warriors. They were guardians. And the Villani were very lucky to have found them. The warning came at dawn. Every sensor array around Villani Prime lit up simultaneously as the largest Krethik's fleet ever recorded dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Intelligence Officer Junho had been right. This wasn't just an attack. This was the entire swarm, making one final desperate push to secure resources for their exodus. Admiral Minseo looked at the tactical display and felt a cold calm settle over her. 3 million Krethik's drones. 500 capital ships. The entire swarm was here, and they were completely surrounding the planet. They're not giving us a choice this time, she said quietly. They need Villani Prime, and they're willing to throw everything at us to get it. Captain Ji-hoon stood beside her on the bridge of the Unsoul. Orders, Admiral? Minseo pulled up the fleet deployment grid. 15 human ships against 3 million enemies. The math was impossible. But humans had been doing impossible things since they climbed down from the trees on a death world and decided to conquer it. Defensive sphere formation, she ordered. Every ship protects a different approach vector. If a single Krethik's drone reaches the planet's atmosphere, we failed. She looked at her officers. The Villani trusted us to protect them. We don't break that trust. Ever. Across the fleet, 8,000 humans moved to battle stations. They sang as they worked old songs from Earth, Korean war ballads, American hymns, African warrior chants, European marches. Every culture contributing its voice to the chorus of defiance. On Crystal Haven, Elder Shamara watched the human fleet move into position. The formation they created was something she had never seen before. Instead of concentrating their firepower, they spread out, each ship alone, but positioned to support the others. It looked suicidal. They're going to die, she chimed in horror. They can't possibly survive this. Commander Hyunwoo, standing beside her, shook his head. Maybe, maybe not, but they'll hold the line until they do. He pulled up the communication channel. Listen. Across every human ship, the same message was being broadcast. Admiral Minseo's voice, clear and strong. To all ships. We stand between the Vellani and annihilation. We hold this line not because we're fearless, but because we choose to be brave. We are Deathworlders. We are humanity, and we do not abandon those who trust us. The Krethic swarm attacked from all directions at once. Fighter pilot Sunho led his squadron against odds that should have been instantly fatal. For every human fighter, there were hundreds of Krethic drones. But Sunho had been flying since he was 16, training in the harsh conditions of Earth's atmosphere where weather systems could kill in seconds. The Krethics were coordinated, but they couldn't match the crazy creativity of a human pilot with nothing to lose. Break on my mark, Sunho called to his squadron. Make them think we're retreating, then hit them from the sides. The human fighters scattered, drawing the Krethics into pursuit. Then, at the last second, they spun and opened fire with everything they had. Krethic's drones erupted in flames. The swarm tried to adapt, but human tactics were built on deception and unpredictability. Every time the Krethics learned one pattern, the humans switched to another on the Unzinchin. Commander Sangwoo watched as a Krethic's capital ship broke through the outer defense perimeter. The massive vessel was heading straight for Vellani Prime, carrying enough firepower to crack the planet's crust. Sir, we can't stop it, his weapons officer reported. It's too big, too fast. Sangwoo looked at the tactical display and made a decision. Then we don't stop it. We redirect it. He opened a channel to Admiral Minseo. Ma'am, I'm going to need the Inchin taken off the deployment grid. Minseo understood immediately. Commander, that's a suicide run. Yes, ma'am, Sangwoo replied calmly. But it's also the only way. That ship reaches the planet, and every Vellani dies. I've got a crew of 200. They've got billions. There was silence on the channel for 3 heartbeats. Then Minseo's voice came back, rough with emotion. Permission granted. Give them hell, Commander. Sangwoo turned to his crew. Every face looked back at him with the same expression. Fear, yes, but also determination. They had all volunteered for this mission. They all knew what it might cost. Anyone who wants to evacuate, do it now, Sangwoo said. No shame in choosing to live. Not one person moved. Then let's show these bugs what humans do when they threaten our friends, Sangwoo said. All power to engines. Ram that ship. The Unzinchin accelerated to full speed, racing toward the Krethic's capital ship like a missile. Point defense fire tore into her hull, but Sangwoo didn't slow down. He aimed for the command section, the brain of the vessel, and hit it at 3% of light speed. The explosion lit up the entire battlefield. On the Unsol, Admiral Minseo watched 200 names disappear from her roster and felt her heart break. But she couldn't stop. Couldn't mourn. Not yet. The battle was still raging. Second wave incoming, her tactical officer reported. They're deploying their world killer weapon. Minseo pulled up the sensor data and felt ice in her veins. The Krethics had brought their ultimate weapon, a gravity bomb designed to shatter a planet's core. If it reached Vellani Prime and activated, the entire world would tear itself apart. All ships, target that weapon, Minseo ordered. Everything we have. The human fleet opened fire with every weapon system they possessed. Railguns, missiles, plasma cannons, even crude explosive shells fired from magnetic accelerators. The space around the world killer became a storm of fire, but the weapon had shields, layers of protection designed to survive exactly this kind of assault. The human firepower was impressive, but it wasn't enough. Captain Ji-hoon watched the display and made a decision. Admiral, request permission to take the Horizon on a close approach. Minseo looked at him. Ji-hoon, your ship is already damaged from the last engagement. You won't survive another direct assault. I know, Ji-hoon said quietly. But the Horizon was built as an exploration vessel. Our shields are designed to survive stellar radiation, asteroid impacts, extreme gravitational forces. If any ship can get close enough to disable that weapon manually, it's us. Minseo closed her eyes briefly. She was sending another crew to their deaths. But the math was simple. One ship's crew against an entire planet. It wasn't even a choice. Go, she said. And Ji-hoon. Thank you. The UNS Horizon broke from the defensive sphere and accelerated toward the world killer. Ji-hoon ordered a full evacuation, sending his crew to escape pods. Most of them refused. Sir, with respect, shut up, Science Officer Mireille said. We're staying. Medical Officer Ji-won nodded. You're going to need someone to operate the shields, and someone to navigate, and someone to keep you from bleeding out when the ship starts falling apart. Ji-hoon looked at his crew, these brave humans who had chosen to follow him across the galaxy. He wanted to order them to leave, but he understood. They were pack animals. They wouldn't abandon their captain, just as he wouldn't abandon the Vellani. Then let's make this count, Ji-hoon said. The Horizon dove through a storm of defensive fire. Her shields flared and failed. Hull breaches opened across 3 decks. But Ji-hoon kept flying, using every trick he had learned in 20 years of space navigation. He spun the ship through a debris field, using destroyed Krethix drones as cover. He burned through his reserve fuel to get extra speed, and he rammed World Killer at full velocity. The weapon shields collapsed under the impact. The Horizon's bow section crumpled like paper. Ji-hoon felt his ribs crack from the force of deceleration. Alarm screamed. The gravity plating failed, and everything not strapped down went floating, but they had done it. The World Killer was disabled. Hull breach on all decks, Mireille reported, her voice strained. Life support failing. Sir, we need to evacuate now. Ji-hoon tried to move and gasped at the pain in his chest. Punctured lung, his medical training told him. Maybe 2. Go, he managed. Get to the pods. Not without you, Ji-won said, already moving to help him. That's an order, Lieutenant. Ji-won looked at him with fierce determination. Court-martial me later. Right now, I'm saving your stubborn Deathworlder life. The crew of the Horizon made it to the escape pods with seconds to spare. As they ejected, Ji-hoon looked back at his ship, the vessel that had carried him across the galaxy to answer a cry for help. She was dying, but she had done her job. The pods were picked up by the Unsoul 30 minutes later. Ji-hoon was rushed to medical, where Vellani and human doctors worked together to save his life. His crew survived with various injuries, but they all survived. The battle lasted 6 more hours. The humans fought with everything they had, using tactics so aggressive and unpredictable that the Krethix swarm couldn't adapt fast enough. When the last Krethix ship finally retreated, the human fleet had lost 3 vessels and taken over 4,000 casualties, but Vellani Prime stood intact. Every Vellani life had been saved. In the aftermath, Elder Shimara came aboard the Unsol to meet with Admiral Minseo. The Villani Elder's colors shifted through emotions too complex for words. "You lost so many," Shimara said quietly. "For us. For people you barely know." Minseo, exhausted and grieving, nodded slowly. "That's what it means to protect someone. Sometimes it costs everything." She looked at Shimara. "But it's worth it. Every life we saved today was worth it." Shimara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that would change the galaxy forever. "We want to propose an alliance."